What if everything you've been told about snacking is the exact reason your fat loss has stalled? Most people believe the only way to lose fat is to fight hunger, to grit their teeth through the afternoon, and wait it out until dinner. That belief is backwards, and it's kept people stuck for years. The right snack, eaten at the right moment, stabilizes your blood sugar, keeps your metabolism firing at a steady rate, and shuts down the exact cravings that lead to overeating later in the day. Today, we're covering 20 snacks that do precisely that, built on 3 pillars nutrition science keeps coming back to: protein, fiber, and volume. Stick around, because snack number 12 is something that looks like a dessert but behaves in your bloodstream almost like it isn't food at all. And snack number 19 is sitting in your kitchen right now, completely overlooked, quietly capable of replacing one of the most calorie-dense snacks in your rotation. Make sure you hit subscribe, because every week we break down the real science behind the food your body was built to thrive on. Let's get into it. These are 20 fat-burning snacks, ranked from excellent to extraordinary. Number 1. Greek yogurt with berries is the snack most people already own and most people underuse. There's a common myth worth clearing up before we go any further: the idea that all yogurt is basically the same product with different marketing. It isn't. The straining process that defines Greek yogurt fundamentally changes its nutritional makeup compared to regular yogurt, not just its thickness. And that difference is the entire reason it earns a top spot on this list. Across Eastern Europe and the Mediterranean, straining yogurt by hand to thicken it and concentrate its protein is a practice that predates refrigeration, done not for flavor but because a thick, protein-rich yogurt kept people full through long stretches without food. That instinct turns out to be biochemically sound. Straining yogurt removes much of the liquid whey, which roughly doubles the protein concentration compared to regular yogurt. Protein is widely regarded as the most satiating macronutrient that exists, and part of the reason is something called a thermic effect of food, the energy your body spends simply digesting what you eat. Protein costs your body more energy to break down than carbohydrate or fat, so a portion of those calories are effectively spent before they're ever stored. Add berries, and you introduce soluble fiber along with polyphenol, plant compounds that research associates with a slower release of sugar into the bloodstream. Nutrition research on high-protein dairy consistently finds that it reduces hunger ratings and lowers the amount eaten at the next meal compared to lower-protein snacks with identical calories. A single cup of plain Greek yogurt delivers close to 20 grams of protein, and pairing it with a half cup of blueberries or strawberries adds meaningful fiber for almost no additional calories. Choose the plain, unsweetened variety and add your own fruit, because pre-sweetened cups can carry as much added sugar as a candy bar. One common mistake worth avoiding is reaching for low-fat or fat-free versions marketed as a healthier choice. Manufacturers frequently compensate for the removed fat with added sugar and thickening agents, which can undermine the exact blood sugar stability this snack is meant to provide. A moderate-fat, plain variety with real fruit stirred in almost always outperforms a fat-free, pre-flavored cup nutritionally, even if the calorie count looks slightly higher on paper. This is the easiest snack on the entire list to build into a daily habit, and it belongs in your rotation starting today. But what comes next works through a completely different mechanism, one that has nothing to do with speed and everything to do with time. Number 2. Cottage cheese has an image problem, and it might be the single most underrated food on this entire list as a direct result. It gets filed away as a relic from decades-old diet plans, bland and forgettable. That reputation has almost nothing to do with its actual nutritional profile. The dominant protein in cottage cheese is casein, and unlike the whey protein found in fast-digesting dairy, casein forms a gel-like structure in the stomach that slows its own digestion. Instead of a quick spike of amino acids, casein trickles them into your bloodstream over several hours, which is why research on casein protein consistently shows a longer satiety window than fast-digesting proteins at the same calorie count. Pair a half cup of cottage cheese, delivering roughly 12 to 14 grams of protein for around 90 calories. With fresh pineapple, and you add natural sweetness along with bromelain, an enzyme unique to pineapple studied for its role in supporting digestion. The sweetness satisfies a dessert-like craving, while the slow-digesting protein anchors a snack, preventing the sugar crash you get from fruit alone. Choose fresh pineapple over syrup-packed canned fruit, and look for low-sodium cottage cheese where available. This pairing has quietly persisted in Mediterranean and Eastern European kitchens for generations, long before anyone had a number to attach to protein content. They simply noticed it kept people satisfied. If you find the texture of cottage cheese off-putting, blending it briefly with a splash of milk creates a smoother, whipped consistency closer to a thick yogurt, without changing the protein or calorie content at all. A simple trick that converted plenty of long-time skeptics. And satisfaction, as you're about to see, comes in a form even more efficient than dairy. Number 3. There may not be a more efficient whole food on the planet than the egg. And there's almost no easier snack than a hard-boiled one with a dash of black pepper, which is exactly why it earns a place on this list despite being about as unglamorous as food gets. Eggs have anchored diets across nearly every culture on Earth for thousands of years. Prized because they were cheap, portable, and reliably filling, a status few foods have managed to hold on to across so many centuries and so many different cuisines. A single large egg delivers around 6 grams of complete protein, meaning it contains all 9 essential amino acids your body cannot manufacture on its own. Complete proteins are particularly effective at triggering satiety hormones, including peptide YY and GLP-1, chemical signals that communicate fullness to your brain. Eggs also supply choline, a nutrient tied to fat metabolism and liver function. The black pepper isn't purely for flavor either. Piperine, the compound behind pepper's heat, has been studied for its potential to support nutrient absorption and for a mild thermogenic effect, a slight uptick in the calories your body burns processing food. Multiple studies on egg-based meals and snacks have found they lead to lower calorie intake later in the day compared to carbohydrate-heavy alternatives of equal calories. Boil a batch of 6 to 8 eggs at the start of the week. Keep them refrigerated, and you have a zero prep snack ready in seconds. If you're worried about cholesterol, it's worth knowing that current research has largely moved away from treating dietary cholesterol in eggs as a major driver of blood cholesterol for most healthy adults, with saturated fat intake overall playing a far larger role, though anyone with existing heart conditions should still check with a doctor about how many eggs fit their individual situation. But eggs alone can't do what happens when you combine fiber, fat, and protein in the same bite, and that combination is next. Number 4. This is a snack combination most people remember from childhood, packed into lunchboxes for decades without a second thought. And the instinct behind it holds up completely under modern scrutiny. Apples are one of the richest common sources of pectin, a soluble fiber that forms a gel in your digestive tract and slows the release of sugar into your bloodstream. On their own, apples satisfy briefly but fade fast. Pair apple slices with 2 tablespoons of natural almond or peanut butter, and you introduce both protein and monounsaturated fat, 2 nutrients that dramatically extend fullness. Fat slows gastric emptying, meaning food physically stays in your stomach longer, which delays the return of hunger signals. Research comparing single macronutrient snacks to combined fiber-fat protein snacks consistently shows the combination produces significantly lower hunger ratings over a 3-hour window, a gap wide enough that it shows up clearly even when total calories between the 2 snacks are matched exactly. Stick to about 2 tablespoons of nut butter with 1 medium apple to keep the snack calorically reasonable, since nut butters are dense in calories even in small servings. Choose a natural variety without added sugar or hydrogenated oils, and check the ingredient label carefully, since many popular nut butter brands add palm oil and sugar specifically to improve shelf stability and sweetness, quietly turning a whole food into something closer to a processed spread. A short ingredient list, ideally just nuts and maybe a pinch of salt, is the best indicator you're getting a version of the snack that actually delivers the benefits described here. It's simple, it's portable, and it's one of the most reliably effective snacks on this entire list. Up next is a snack most people dismiss as junk food, and the science behind why that's wrong might surprise you. Number 5. Of everything on this list, popcorn might be the biggest surprise, largely because most people mentally file it under junk food alongside chips and pretzels without ever separating the preparation method from the food itself. It carries a reputation problem thanks to movie theater butter and salt, but air pop popcorn on its own is a whole grain, and whole grains are consistently linked to better weight management outcomes in long-term nutrition research. The secret is volume. 3 cups of air pop popcorn contains roughly 90 to 100 calories, yet fills an enormous amount of physical space in your stomach. Fullness signals respond significantly to stomach stretch and food volume, not calorie count alone, which means popcorn can satisfy the mechanical, hand-to-mouth experience people associate with mindless snacking while keeping total intake remarkably low. As a whole grain, popcorn also contains resistant starch and fiber that isn't fully broken down in the small intestine, instead feeding beneficial bacteria in the colon that produce short-chain fatty acids linked to improved metabolic health. One study comparing popcorn to potato chips found participants reported significantly greater fullness per calorie consumed when eating popcorn, largely attributed to its fiber content and low energy density. Make it yourself in an air popper or on the stovetop with a small amount of oil, season lightly with sea salt, nutritional yeast, or cinnamon, and you have one of the highest volume, lowest calorie snacks available anywhere. Pre-packaged microwave popcorn deserves a specific mention here, because many varieties are cooked in oils high in trans fats or coated with artificial butter flavoring that can add several hundred calories to what should be a light snack. Reading a label, or better yet, popping your own kernels, is a difference between this being a genuine fat loss tool and an accidental calorie trap disguised as one. What's coming next has quietly fed entire civilizations, and it's about to earn a spot in your kitchen too. Number 6. Chickpeas have become one of the most studied legumes in fat loss research, and roasting them turns an already excellent food into something genuinely crunchy and satisfying, capable of replacing chips or crackers entirely, which matters enormously if crunch is a specific craving driving you toward processed snacks in the first place. Also known as garbanzo beans, chickpeas have anchored diets across the Mediterranean, Middle East, and South Asia for thousands of years, valued for sustaining people through physical labor on modest amounts of food, long before anyone could explain why a legume this unassuming worked so well. That staying power comes from an unusually strong ratio of protein to fiber, a combination most people associate with animal foods rather than something as ordinary and inexpensive as a dried bean. A half cup of chickpeas delivers roughly 6 grams of protein and 6 grams of fiber, a combination few plant foods can match. Fiber slows digestion and feeds beneficial gut bacteria, while the protein contributes to the same satiety signaling seen with animal proteins, just at a more modest level. Research on regular legume consumption has repeatedly linked it to improved satiety and better long-term weight management compared to diets low in legumes. Roast chickpeas with a small amount of olive oil and spices like paprika, cumin, or garlic powder, and you get a satisfying crunch that mimics the sensory experience of processed snack foods without the refined flour. A quarter cup delivers a substantial fiber and protein punch for around 120 calories. Make a batch at the start of the week and store it in an airtight container. Though it's worth noting roasted chickpeas tend to soften after a day or two, so storing them uncovered in the refrigerator for the first few hours before sealing helps preserve that crunch a little longer. But if you want a plant food that goes even further, matching the completeness of animal protein, that's exactly what's coming next. Number 7. Edamame, young soybeans still in their pods, has anchored East Asian snacking for centuries. Traditionally steamed and lightly salted, served long before anyone understood the specific amino acid profile that makes it stand apart from nearly every other plant food on Earth. What makes it remarkable from a fat loss standpoint is that it's one of the only common plant foods that qualifies as complete protein, containing all 9 essential amino acids in meaningful amounts, a rarity outside the animal kingdom. A single cup of edamame delivers around 17 grams of protein and 8 grams of fiber, an extraordinary combination for a plant-based snack. That protein and fiber pairing triggers the same satiety mechanisms we've seen throughout this list: slow digestion, sustained fullness signaling, and a blunted blood sugar response. Edamame also contains isoflavones, plant compounds studied for a range of metabolic health effects, though the primary benefit here is a straightforward mechanical combination of high protein, high fiber, and moderate calories. A cup of edamame contains roughly 190 calories, but because it digests slowly and provides significant volume, it functions as a far more filling snack than its calorie count alone would suggest. Steam in the pod, sprinkle with sea salt, and eat by popping the beans out with your teeth, a method that naturally slows down how quickly you eat, giving your body more time to register fullness before you've overeaten. Frozen edamame, already shelled or still in the pod, is widely available and retains essentially the same nutritional profile as fresh, making this one of the few snacks on this list that requires zero fresh produce shopping and can be kept stocked in the freezer indefinitely. Next, we're looking at a snack built entirely around a single nutrition science principle that most people have never heard of, and once you understand it, you'll see it everywhere. Number 8. This combination is built around a concept nutrition scientists call energy density, the number of calories packed into a given weight or volume of food, and it's arguably the single most useful concept on this entire list once you understand it, because it explains why some foods leave you hungry an hour later, while others, at the same calorie count, keep you full for the rest of the afternoon. Cucumbers are roughly 95% water, meaning a full plate of cucumber slices contains barely any calories while taking up substantial physical space in your stomach. On their own, cucumbers won't keep you full for long since they contain very little protein or fat, which is exactly why so many people who try to snack on raw vegetables alone end up hungry again within the hour and give up on the strategy entirely. Paired with hummus made from chickpeas, tahini, olive oil, and lemon juice, you get exactly the protein and fat needed to extend satiety while keeping total calories low. 2 tablespoons of hummus contains around 4 grams of protein, 4 grams of fiber, and healthy monounsaturated fat. Research on low-energy density eating patterns consistently shows that people who fill their plates with high-volume, low-calorie foods like cucumbers naturally consume fewer total calories, while reporting equal or greater satisfaction compared to those eating calorie-dense, low-volume foods. This is one of the core reasons Mediterranean-style eating patterns are associated with sustainable long-term weight management, rather than the rebound weight gain seen with restrictive diets. A full plate of cucumber slices with a quarter cup of hummus totals around 150 calories, while delivering a genuinely filling snack experience with substantial chewing time. Choose hummus without excessive added oils or preservative-heavy ingredient lists, and don't be shy with the cucumber portion, since it's genuinely difficult to overeat on a vegetable that's mostly water. Store-bought hummus varies enormously between brands, so it's worth comparing labels, since some versions pack nearly double the calories per serving of others simply due to added oils used for texture rather than flavor. If you're noticing a pattern here, that real fat loss comes from combining protein, fiber, and smart food volume rather than white-knuckling through hunger, do me a favor and tap that like button right now. It genuinely helps this video reach people looking for science-backed answers about nutrition. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a good time, because we cover exactly this kind of evidence-based content every single week. Let's keep going, because the next snack turns a joke food into a legitimate fat loss tool. Number 9. Celery has a reputation as something of a joke food, dismissed as containing basically nothing. A punchline in diet culture for decades before anyone actually examined what it does when it's paired correctly rather than eaten alone. That reputation is only half true, but the underlying principle is sound. Celery is extremely low in calories, around 6 calories per stalk, almost entirely due to its high water content. Similar to cucumber. On its own, it provides crunch and a small amount of fiber, but very little staying power. The transformation happens when you pair it with peanut butter. A tablespoon on a few stalks of celery delivers protein, healthy fat, and a small amount of fiber from the peanuts themselves, all of which slow digestion and extend fullness, turning a snack that used to disappear from your appetite within minutes into one that genuinely carries you through to the next meal. The mechanical crunch plays an underappreciated role too. Research on chewing and satiety suggests foods requiring more mastication tend to produce greater feelings of fullness relative to their calorie content, partly because chewing takes time, giving your brain the roughly 20 minutes it needs to register fullness signals from the stomach and gut hormones. Celery with peanut butter forces you to slow down, unlike a bag of chips that can be consumed in under a minute. Keep the peanut butter portion to 1 to 2 tablespoons to manage total calories, since natural peanut butter is calorie-dense despite its benefits. This snack has persisted in home kitchens for decades not because of marketing, but because the ratio of effort, crunch, and fullness genuinely works. It's also one of the cheapest, most accessible snacks on this entire list. And the snacks people actually stick with long-term are rarely the exotic ones. They're the ones simple enough to become automatic. For anyone who finds plain peanut butter too heavy on its own, mixing in a teaspoon of Greek yogurt lightens the texture and boosts the protein content further, without meaningfully changing the flavor profile. Speaking of simple and effective, the next snack strips things down to their most essential components. Number 10. When you reduce a snack to its most essential fat loss components, lean protein wrapped around a low-calorie vegetable is about as effective as it gets, and this particular pairing strips away almost everything unnecessary, while keeping everything that actually matters. Turkey breast is one of the leanest common protein sources available, delivering roughly 17 grams of protein per 3-ounce serving for very low fat and correspondingly few calories. Wrap a few slices around cucumber spears, and you combine that lean, complete protein with the same high water content volume benefit we saw with cucumber and hummus. The result is a snack that's almost entirely protein and water, an extremely efficient combination for anyone focused specifically on fat loss, since it delivers satiety and muscle-supporting amino acids at minimal caloric cost. Protein plays a particularly important role during any period of fat loss because it helps preserve lean muscle mass, while the body draws on fat stores for energy. Diets too low in protein during a calorie deficit risk losing muscle alongside fat, which can slow metabolism over time since muscle tissue burns more calories at rest than fat tissue does. A rollup made from 3 to 4 slices of deli turkey and a cucumber spear, optionally with a thin smear of mustard, totals under 100 calories while delivering a substantial protein dose. Choose turkey breast without added sugars or excessive sodium when possible, and if you're watching sodium intake specifically, look for deli turkey labeled as lower sodium, since standard deli meats can carry a surprising amount of salt per serving even in small portions. This is one of the cleanest, most efficient snacks on the list, but the next one takes lean protein even further, virtually eliminating carbohydrates from the equation entirely. Number 11. Here's the snack that essentially removes carbohydrates from the picture while maximizing lean protein, making it one of the most metabolically efficient options on this entire list. If you've been paying attention to the pattern so far, protein plus volume minus refined carbohydrate, you'll notice this snack takes that formula about as far as it can go. Tuna is an exceptionally lean protein source, delivering around 20 grams of protein per 3-ounce serving for roughly 100 calories, virtually fat-free unless packed in oil. Instead of piling it onto crackers or bread, spoon tuna mixed with a small amount of Greek yogurt or a touch of olive oil into crisp lettuce cups or hollow cucumber halves. This swaps a refined carb delivery method for more of that same low-calorie, high-volume base we've now seen repeatedly on this list. The near total absence of carbohydrates means the snack produces almost no blood sugar response at all, which matters because blood sugar spikes trigger insulin release, and insulin, among its many roles, signals the body to store fat and inhibits the breakdown of existing fat stores or energy. A snack that avoids a spike entirely keeps your body in a more consistent fat-burning state between meals. Tuna also delivers omega-3 fatty acids, associated in research with reduced inflammation and, in some studies, modestly improved metabolic markers related to insulin sensitivity. Choose tuna packed in water rather than oil, and use a Greek yogurt base instead of mayonnaise to add protein rather than empty calories. If you eat tuna regularly, it's worth rotating between light tuna and other lean fish sources like canned salmon, since light tuna generally carries lower mercury levels than larger species like albacore, make it the more suitable choice for frequent snacking rather than occasional consumption. This is about as close to a pure protein snack as you'll find anywhere on this list. Up next, a snack technique borrowed from ancient civilizations that still holds up perfectly against modern science. Number 12. Chia seeds have been used as a food and endurance source since the Aztec and Mayan civilizations, prized for their ability to provide sustained energy over long stretches, exactly the property that makes them so useful for fat loss today, even though the mechanism modern science uses to explain it looks nothing like what ancient runners would have described. The mechanism is almost entirely about fiber and water absorption. Chia seeds can absorb many times their weight in liquid, forming a gel-like pudding texture when soaked overnight in milk or a milk alternative. That gel isn't just a texture trick. It's soluble fiber physically expanding in your digestive tract, creating substantial fullness from a relatively small serving of seeds, which is precisely why a couple of tablespoons can feel like a far larger meal than the calorie count would ever suggest. 2 tablespoons of chia seeds contain around 10 grams of fiber, close to 40% of a full day's recommended intake, for about 140 calories. Research on soluble fiber consistently shows it slows gastric emptying, meaning food remains in the stomach longer, delaying hunger signals, and feeds beneficial gut bacteria that produce compounds linked to improved metabolic regulation. Chia seeds also contain a meaningful amount of plant-based omega-3 fatty acids in the form of alpha-linolenic acid, along with a small but notable amount of complete protein. Mix 2 tablespoons into a cup of unsweetened almond milk, add a touch of cinnamon or vanilla, and let it sit in the refrigerator overnight. By morning it thickens into a pudding that can be topped with a small amount of fruit. One detail worth knowing is that chia seeds don't need to be ground the way flax seeds do to release their nutrients, since their fiber is accessible even when the seed is left whole, which is part why they're such a convenient no-prep pantry staple, compared to other seeds that require a grinder to be useful. This snack requires almost no active preparation time, yet delivers one of the highest fiber-to-calorie ratios of any food on this list. The next snack works through a nearly identical mechanism, but it's built around a grain almost everyone already has in their kitchen. Number 13. Oats occupy a unique place in fat loss nutrition because of a specific soluble fiber called beta-glucan, concentrated in oats and extensively studied for its effects on both blood sugar and cholesterol, a compound that behaves almost like a built-in slow-release mechanism for the carbohydrates surrounding it. When oats are soaked overnight rather than cooked, the beta-glucan forms a thick, viscous gel, similar in principle to what we just saw with chia seeds, that slows the rate at which sugar from the oats enters the bloodstream. This matters enormously for fat loss because a slower, more gradual blood sugar rise means a correspondingly smaller insulin response, keeping the body in a more favorable state for burning fat rather than storing it. Research on beta-glucan consumption has found it increases feelings of fullness and reduces subsequent food intake, compared to refined grain consumption at equal calories. Cinnamon adds more than flavor here too. Several studies have investigated cinnamon's potential role in improving insulin sensitivity, meaning the body cells respond more efficiently to insulin, requiring less of it to manage blood sugar, which again supports a metabolic environment more conducive to fat burning. A half cup of dry rolled oats soaked overnight in unsweetened almond milk with a teaspoon of cinnamon stirred and delivers around 4 grams of fiber and sustained release carbohydrate energy for around 150 calories before toppings. Keep portions to a half cup of dry oats and skip the added sugars and syrups that often accompany this dish. And overnight oats becomes a genuinely effective fat loss snack rather than a dessert in disguise. Steel-cut and rolled oats both work for this method, though rolled oats tend to soften into a more pudding-like texture overnight, while steel-cut retains slightly more bite. So it largely comes down to personal preference rather than any meaningful nutritional difference between the two. What's coming next seems like it shouldn't belong on a fat loss list at all, and that's exactly why the science behind it is so interesting. Number 14. Nuts occupy a strange place in fat loss nutrition, and this is exactly the kind of counterintuitive finding that makes nutrition science genuinely interesting rather than predictable. They're calorie-dense. Yet decades of research consistently show that people who regularly eat modest portions of nuts do not gain weight, and often manage their weight more effectively than those who avoid them entirely. The explanation lies in a combination of factors. Almonds are rich in monounsaturated fat, protein, and fiber, a combination that slows digestion and extends satiety significantly beyond what the calorie count alone would suggest, which helps explain why nut eaters in long-term studies so often defy the assumption that calorie-dense foods automatically lead to weight gain. Research has also found that a meaningful percentage of the fat in whole almonds isn't fully absorbed by the digestive system, passing through partially intact, meaning the effective calorie count of almonds may be somewhat lower than what's printed on the label. Pairing a small handful of almonds, around 12 to 14, with a half cup of raspberries adds fiber and volume, without significant additional calories. Raspberries are one of the highest fiber fruits available, containing around 8 grams of fiber per cup, more than nearly any other common fruit, which further extends the fullness this snack provides. The combination totals around 160 to 180 calories, while delivering healthy fat, protein, and a substantial fiber load. The key word here is portion, a small handful, not a large bowl, since almonds are easy to overeat given how calorically dense they are. Pre-portioning almonds into small containers at the start of the week removes the temptation to eat straight from a large bag, keeping the snack in the fat loss category rather than tipping it into a calorie surplus. Raw or dry roasted almonds are preferable to varieties cooked in oil, which add extra calories without adding any real benefit, and unsalted versions make it easier to keep sodium intake in check across the rest of the day. The next snack takes everything we've learned about protein and applies it to something savory, which matters more than you might think. Number 15. Not everyone wants a sweet snack, and having a reliable, savory, high-protein option prevents the kind of decision fatigue that leads people back toward chips or crackers out of simple boredom with their healthy options, a problem far more people run into than they realize when every recommended snack on a list happens to be fruit-forward. This is a savory variation on the cottage cheese principle we covered earlier, built around the same slow-digesting casein protein that extends satiety over several hours. Mixing in diced cucumber adds volume and water content, with essentially no additional calories, while fresh herbs like dill, chives, or parsley add flavor complexity without any meaningful caloric cost. A small amount of black pepper, a squeeze of lemon, or a pinch of garlic powder rounds out the flavor further. This combination totals around 100 to 120 calories per half cup serving, while delivering the same 12 to 14 grams of protein found in plain cottage cheese. What makes the snack particularly effective for fat loss is that it's genuinely low in sugar compared to most snack options, sweet or savory, meaning it produces minimal insulin response while still delivering substantial protein-driven satiety. Traditional dairy-based diets across Eastern Europe and the Middle East have relied on savory fresh cheese and vegetable combinations like this for generations, understanding intuitively what modern research now confirms. Protein and volume, not sugar, are what actually keep people satisfied. This variation is also worth keeping in the fridge pre-mixed, since unlike fresh berries, which can turn a sweet version watery within a day, this savory mix generally holds its texture for 2 to 3 days, making it genuinely meal prep friendly. Next up, we're pairing a similar dip strategy with one of the most underrated vegetables on the produce shelf. Number 16. Bell peppers, particularly the red, yellow, and orange varieties, are extremely high in water content and fiber relative to their minimal calorie count, roughly 30 calories per whole pepper, making them one of the most efficient vegetables available for anyone who wants a large, colorful plate of food without a large calorie bill attached to it. Slicing them into strips provides a satisfying crunch and substantial chewing time, both of which contribute to mechanical side of satiety we've discussed throughout this list. Pairing bell pepper strips with a dip made from plain Greek yogurt rather than sour cream, or a store-bought ranch dressing loaded with added sugar and industrial oils transforms this into a legitimately high-protein snack rather than an empty-calorie vegetable platter. A quarter cup of plain Greek yogurt seasoned with garlic powder, dry dill, and a pinch of salt delivers around 6 grams of protein for roughly 35 calories, meaning the entire snack, several sliced bell peppers plus the yogurt dip, totals well under 150 calories while providing a substantial volume of food, protein for satiety, and fiber for digestive health. This combination is particularly useful during periods when you're craving something to dip and crunch, satisfying that specific sensory craving that often leads people toward chips and store-bought dips, without dragging along the sodium and refined oil that usually comes attached to that craving. The swap from a fat and sugar-heavy dip to a protein-forward Greek yogurt base is one of the simplest, highest-impact changes you can make to an existing snacking habit without changing the fundamental experience of what you're eating. Small swaps like this one, repeated consistently over months, tend to produce more durable fat loss than any single dramatic diet change ever does. All 3 colors of bell pepper work equally well here, though it's worth noting red peppers are simply a more ripened version of green peppers and typically contain meaningfully more vitamin C and beta-carotene, as a result, making them the slightly stronger nutritional choice when you have the option. And now we arrive at the snack I promised you at the very beginning, the one that quietly replaces a much heavier dessert for a fraction of the cost. Number 17. This is the one I mentioned right at the start of this video, the freezer aisle secret hiding in plain sight. Grapes frozen for a few hours undergo a genuinely remarkable textural transformation. The water inside each grape forms small ice crystals, turning an ordinary grape into something with a texture closer to a small sorbet bite, cold, slightly chewy, and satisfyingly sweet. A cup of grapes contains around 60 to 100 calories depending on size and variety, a fraction of what an equivalent volume of ice cream would contain, while delivering natural fiber and a range of polyphenol antioxidants, including resveratrol, that have been studied for various metabolic and cardiovascular benefits. Pairing frozen grapes with a scoop of plain Greek yogurt adds a protein component that grapes alone lack, extending satiety and blunting the blood sugar response from a fruit's natural sugars. This combination directly targets one of the most common obstacles to sustainable fat loss, the craving for something cold, sweet, and dessert-like in the evening. Rather than fighting that craving with sheer willpower, which research on dieting consistently shows fails over the long term, this snack satisfies it with a fraction of the calories and sugar of actual ice cream, while adding fiber and protein that ice cream simply doesn't provide. Freeze a bag of grapes at the start of the week, portion out a cup with a half cup of Greek yogurt when the craving hits, and you have a genuinely satisfying dessert replacement for well under 200 calories. Seedless grapes are obviously the more convenient choice for this method, and washing them thoroughly before freezing matters more than usual here, since any residue on the skin becomes concentrated in flavor once the water inside freezes and the surface texture changes. But we're not done, because the next snack pairs an unusually high-fiber fruit with something almost nobody thinks to combine it with. Number 18. Pears are one of the highest fiber common fruits available, containing around 6 grams of fiber in a single medium pear, much of it concentrated in the skin. So eating the pear unpeeled maximizes this benefit, a small detail that quietly determines whether you get the full nutritional value this fruit has to offer or leave most of it in the compost bin. That fiber slows the digestion of the fruit's natural sugars, preventing the sharp blood sugar spike that fruit alone can sometimes produce, particularly in people sensitive to rapid glucose changes. On its own, a pear makes a reasonably filling snack. Paired with light string cheese, delivering around 6 to 7 grams of protein for roughly 50 to 60 calories. The combination becomes considerably more effective at sustaining fullness over several hours rather than just the 20 to 30 minutes fruit alone might provide. String cheese also offers a mechanical, almost ritualistic eating experience, peeling it into strips, and some research on mindful eating suggests that this kind of slower, more deliberate eating can increase satisfaction relative to how quickly the food is actually consumed. Together, a medium pear and 1 light string cheese total around 140 to 150 calories, while delivering meaningful fiber and protein in a genuinely portable, no-preparation format, making this one of the easiest snacks on this list to keep on hand at work, in a bag, or in the car. Choose light or part-skim string cheese to keep saturated fat moderate, and eat the pear with the skin on for the full fiber benefit it has to offer. If a pear feels slightly firm and underripe, letting it sit at room temperature for a day or two significantly improves both sweetness and texture, since pears, unlike most fruit, are typically picked and sold before they fully ripened. Next, one of the highest volume, lowest calorie combinations on the entire list, and it's perfect for anyone who wants to eat a genuinely large portion of food without a large calorie cost. Number 19. This is one of the highest volume, lowest calorie combinations on this entire list, and it works particularly well as a warm weather snack when appetite for something light and refreshing tend to increase. Offer a way to eat a genuinely large plate of food without the caloric cost that usually comes with a large plate of food. Watermelon is over 90% water, meaning a large, generous serving, even 2 full cups, contains only around 90 to 100 calories, a ratio that makes it one of the most efficient foods on the planet for anyone trying to eat a genuinely large portion without a genuinely large calorie cost. On its own, watermelon provides very little protein and digests quickly, meaning its fullness effect, while real due to sheer water volume, doesn't last particularly long. Pairing it with a half cup of cottage cheese introduces the same slow-digesting casein protein discussed earlier, extending the satiety window significantly beyond what watermelon alone provides. Watermelon also contains citrulline, an amino acid studied for its role in blood vessel function and circulation, along with lycopene, the same carotenoid antioxidant found in tomatoes, present in watermelon in a form the body absorbs particularly well due to the fruit's high water content aiding nutrient transport. The combination of watermelon and cottage cheese totals around 180 to 200 calories for a genuinely large, satisfying portion of food, 2 full cups of fruit plus a half cup of cheese, making it one of the most volume-efficient snacks available for anyone focused on eating a substantial amount of food while maintaining a calorie deficit. This pairing also works particularly well immediately following physical activity, when the combination of quick-digesting fruit sugar for glycogen replenishment and slow-digesting protein for muscle recovery serves a genuinely useful physiological purpose beyond simple snacking. Interestingly, lycopene is one of the few nutrients that becomes slightly more concentrated as watermelon ripens toward its deepest red color, so a fully ripe melon isn't just sweeter, it's also nutritionally denser than one picked early. And now, the final snack on this list, the one that proves fat loss was never really about eliminating everything you enjoy. Number 20. Here we are at number 20. Save for last because it proves that fat loss was never about eliminating the foods you love. It was about building a smarter version of them, and there's no better example of that principle on this entire list than the one we're closing on. Dark chocolate, specifically varieties containing 70% cacao or higher, contains meaningfully less sugar than milk chocolate, while delivering flavonols, a class of antioxidant compound that research has linked to improved blood vessel function and, in some studies, modest improvements in insulin sensitivity. A single ounce of dark chocolate, about 2 to 3 small squares, contains around 170 calories, which sounds significant until you consider how satisfying a small, intensely flavored portion actually is compared to the same calorie count in a less flavorful food, a difference that becomes obvious the moment you compare it side by side with an equal calorie portion of milk chocolate. Pairing dark chocolate with strawberries, one of the lowest sugar, highest fiber common fruits, dilutes the overall calorie and sugar density of the snack, while adding volume, vitamin C, and additional antioxidant compounds called anthocyanins that work alongside the flavonols in the chocolate. A serving of 1 ounce of dark chocolate alongside a full cup of sliced strawberries totals around 220 calories for a genuinely dessert-like, craving-satisfying snack experience. The combination works on a psychological level as much as a biochemical one. Research on sustainable dieting consistently shows that completely eliminating foods you enjoy leads to higher rates of binge eating and diet abandonment over time, while allowing controlled portion versions of those foods leads to significantly better long-term adherence, which may be the single most important finding on this entire list for anyone who has tried and failed a restrictive diet before. A small portion of real dark chocolate paired with fiber-rich fruit satisfies the craving completely, rather than leaving you wanting more the way an artificially low-fat, low-flavored diet snack often does. When shopping, checking the cacao percentage on the label matters more than trusting the word dark alone, since some products labeled dark chocolate contain as little as 40% cacao, closer in sugar content to milk chocolate than to the 70% and higher varieties this benefit is actually based on. If you made it all the way here, you've just received a complete science-backed blueprint for snacking your way toward fat loss instead of snacking your way out of it. Let me leave you with the framework underneath everything we just covered. Build satiety with protein first. Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, eggs, turkey, tuna, edamame. Add fiber to slow digestion and extend fullness. Berries, apples, chia seeds, oats, pears. Use high-volume, low-calorie vegetables and fruits to fill your stomach without filling your calorie budget. Cucumbers, celery, bell peppers, watermelon. And finally, allow yourself controlled, satisfying versions of foods you actually crave. Frozen grapes instead of ice cream, dark chocolate instead of candy. This isn't a restriction plan. It's a strategy and it's available to anyone at any age, starting today. Notice something about every single item on this list. None of them required a specialty ingredient you can't find at a normal grocery store. None of them required hours of preparation. None of them asked you to give up flavor, texture, or satisfaction in exchange for results. That's not an accident. The snacks that actually work long-term are never the complicated ones. They're the ones simple enough to survive a busy week, a bad day, or a moment of genuine hunger, because those are the moments that actually determine whether a habit sticks or falls apart. Pick 2 or 3 from this list. Keep them stocked and ready, and let them quietly replace whatever you're currently reaching for out of pure convenience rather than intention. That single change, repeated daily, is worth more than almost any other decision you'll make about food this year. It won't feel dramatic in a moment. And that's exactly the point, since the changes that actually last are rarely the ones that feel dramatic on day one. If this changed the way you think about the food between your meals, smash that like button and drop a comment telling me which snack you're adding to your rotation first. Are you team Greek yogurt, team tuna boats, or team dark chocolate? I read every comment, and I genuinely love hearing from you. And if you haven't subscribed to Healthy Roots yet, now's the time, because we're building a community that takes nutrition seriously, evidence-based, practical, and deeply connected to how the body actually works. Real fat loss was never about starving between meals. It comes from what's in your hand when hunger strikes. And now you know exactly what to reach for.